Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. It's your boy D Black. As you know, coming at you raw and uncut. Alright, Raw tonight was not a good show. I'm here to tell you. You figure that we're here to get excited for the next PLE that's coming, which is, the Elimination Chamber. And then try to get geared up for WrestleMania, which is right around the corner. But for some reason, Raw is not doing that. It's just insane. WWE is not doing that. Triple H, TKO, I don't know who to blame. More or less, Triple H and stuff. And they wonder why this ticket sales are bad because the shows are bad. But anyway, we're not going to jump into that. I just want to get done with Raw because it was very, very disappointing. Nothing leading up to what's going to be going on this Saturday for the Elimination Chamber. Okay, we start out with Corey and Michael Cole. They're in the ring, getting ready to start talking about AJ, AJ Styles and his career. Gunther comes out. Then Gunther basically tells him to go, to get out of his ring and to go, to the announcer table and tell them and to tell everyone how great he is and stuff. And then as Gunther started talking and everything, I mean, really saying nothing really. The crowd even doesn't even give him, the respect. They keep telling him that he tapped out. He tapped out. They'll never, never, ever forget that and stuff, but they're still talking about it and stuff, So, I mean, Gunther's just not that guy. He goes on talking about how he, you know, retired John Cena and Goldberg and now AJ Styles and stuff like that. But then Adam Pearce comes out, you know, to remove Gunther from the ring and stuff. And Gunther, trying to, talk crap and everything. And then all of a sudden, Dragon Lee comes out and he attacks Gunther. And so now they're brawling and stuff and everything. And so then they get that cleared up, and then Cody comes out and stuff. Then he says, to the crowd in Atlanta, you know, he knows what they want to talk about, and talking about AJ Styles, you know, and then out comes Division, and then Paul Heyman comes out, but then he gives the mic to Austin Theory, and Austin Theory really says nothing about nothing and stuff. And then Logan Paul comes out, tries to throw a little bit of insults, at Cody Rhodes and say, that Bronson Reed is going to win, the Elimination Chamber, or actually is going to win, the qualifying match tonight, and then go on and win the Elimination Chamber and stuff like that. And as far as whoever's inside the chamber, Bronson Reed was going to beat, and he said they were going to beat Cody first and everything, and then everybody else after that, and then go on, and win the championship. So then Cody says, something about like it looks like they really want something, for a fight, and he says, "I know Uso that's ready to fight and everything." And then it was Jay Uso, so he introduced Jay Uso, to come out and everything, and then we get the qualification match for Bronson Reed, Jay Uso, and the original El Grande Americano. The match was going okay. I mean, it wasn't all that and everything. They rumbled, they did their thing and stuff. There was a lot of things that were really, you know, foretold in the match and everything that was going to happen. It showed how strong the original Grande Americano is, which is Chad Gable and stuff. Because he's always been strong. He lifted, Bronson Reed up, and gave him a suplex and stuff. And then you can see Jay Uso climbing on top of doggone El Grande Americano, where Bronson Reed had him up to do a double Samoan drop, which was crazy. Um, and then all of a sudden, Bronson Reed hurts himself. You know, he Chad Gable was ready to pin Jay, and then Bronson Reed, jumps over to try to actually, disturb the count. And then he hurt his right bicep. He grabbed it, no sooner as he heard it and stuff. And I think it happened during the when he got suplexed and stuff. You can see something happen. There was another spot that he did that he kind of like jerked that arm also and everything. I think once he took Chad Cable, Americano off of Jay is when he actually hurt it again and stuff. So he's out of the ring. Jay Uso ends up winning the match and stuff, and hopefully that Bronson Reed, will recover soon. You know, a torn bicep is that's going to take time to heal. So we know he won't be there at WrestleMania, and you got to say now the vision is destroyed. Seth Rollins is out, with the injury. Braun Breaker is out with an injury. Now Bronson Reed is out with an injury. Not only leaves Logan Paul and Austin Theory, really, for the vision. What vision is that? And Paul Heyman, what's he going to do with them guys? I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens with that because that's just going to be interesting. All right, and then we get the promo with Liv Morgan. She's coming out with Dirty Dom. This is where she's got to announce who she's going to face at WrestleMania. Will it be Stephanie Valkyrie? Will it be Jade Cargill? And then Dirty Dom gets on the mic and he starts talking and everything and stuff. And so he tells Stephanie and Jade to come out and everything. And so they both do. They both come out. And then Stephanie goes to, I'm sorry, Liv goes to Stephanie. She tells Stephanie about, everything that she, said about her was true, and that she kind of felt sorry for Stephanie, for the 10 years that she struggled through, to become a professional wrestler and everything. It's more like she was giving her more feelings for stuff and everything. The crowd wasn't even not even in the promo or anything like that. They didn't give her no boos. It was just empty silence and stuff. But anyway, she kept going on and saying that, she was sorry for feeling, that she was more entitled and everything like that. And that, she didn't struggle like Stephanie did and, stuff like that. And then she goes on to say, well, I guess I made, my decision of who I want, meet, at WrestleMania. And then she looks towards Jade Cargill. She stares at Jade, and all of a sudden she cracks Stephanie Valkyrie with with the microphone and stuff. And man, Stephanie dropped like a bag of potatoes and stuff. And then Liv got on top of her, started beating her up, and stuff. And then she picked up the belt, held it up in the air and stuff. And then, she threw it back on Stephanie and got out of the ring. So we're gonna see what happens there. Ooh, I can't. Now that match, that kind of put me in the mind and say, okay, I can't wait to see what Stephanie's gonna do with Liv, at WrestleMania. So that was okay there. And now you got the New Day, Kofi Kingston, and Xavier talking trash to Javon Evans and everything, because Javon Evans sees, his friend Offset and everything. They were there together and stuff. And then Cody is, telling Javon just because, he's had a few matches up under his wing and stuff, he ain't all that and stuff. And that, so they end up, with a match later on in the show. Then we get the match with Natalie, or Natty as they call her now, against Maxine Dupree, which makes no sense to me. I mean, for a minute they started going, and stuff like that. Maxine kicks Natty over the banister, but Natty gets back. He kicks her off of her, and then Maxine was supposed to hit the side of the ring post, and she hit it, but her head didn't. And then she acted like she was knocked out from it and stuff. And Nat got on top and started beating the hell out of her. And, the referee, actually before Natalie started beating her up, called for the bell. And Natalie wins because Maxine could not, further on. But that was crazy. She missed the whole ring post and then faked that she was knocked out. That was crazy and stuff. And then you get backstage, JD McDonough, talking to Finn Balor, and then Dom, he comes up to them and he's asking them where they were, when he got beat, in the elimination chamber, qualifying match and stuff like that. And he said that he would have been there for them if they wasn't there. And then Finn said, "Look, hey, I got my own problems. I got him. He's worried about a match that he got coming up with CM Punk and stuff. And he basically tells Dom, hey, look, grow up, be a man, and you go out and do your stuff. Basically on your own and stuff." Because what he's trying to do is trying to get a world title. He said he is going to win the world title. I don't think that's going to happen, but good for Finn Balor for thinking that and stuff. But anyway, um, and so he walks off, and then JD McDonough tells Dom that he'll talk to Finn, try to give Dom some help because he puts his belt up next week against Penta, and I believe Dom's going to lose that title at that time. All right, and then we got Nick Aldis back there with this box. So the box was first sent to Raw. Adam Pearce sends the box to Nick Aldis. Nick Aldis sends the box back to Adam Pearce. So Adam Pearce tells the people to ship the box to Chicago, for the Elimination Chamber, and then him and Nick will open the box up, together there. And then you got Rusev coming out, tell Adam Pearce, that they need to talk, and Adam Pearce is trying to tell him, hey, we can talk a little bit later and stuff, and that he has something, that he has to handle. And Russo said, hey, there's something, more important than him. And then Obafemi says, yes, he is. And stuff. And so basically they end up, having a little steer off and everything again. So we'll see what happens with that match. Pretty soon it'll probably be next week sometime. Coming, depends on where Ober's going to be signing at. Rusev is on Raw. So now, and then he did, Obafemi did destroy the War Raiders, and they're on Raw. So I'm thinking that Ober's going to be signing on Raw and stuff, which would be good. And then we have the Brock Lesnar promo with Paul Heyman. And then, Paul Heyman is, introducing Brock Lesnar and stuff like that. He puts up a schedule of, where Brock Lesnar's going to be and stuff. He started boasting about how Brock Lesnar was the one who beat the Undertaker, streak and stuff like that. And with the schedule, he's basically saying that if there's anybody brave enough to come out, to defeat Brock Lesnar before WrestleMania, he gave a schedule and stuff. And so he says he doesn't think there's anybody back there that has the balls to come out, to challenge him and everything. And I thought at that point when he said that, I'm thinking like, why not Obafemi? That would have been a great match. Obafemi and Brock Lesnar. That would have been really a good match and stuff. But nope, they blew smoke up everybody's pie hole and everything. So we gotta wait to see who's gonna come out. Hopefully before then it will be Obafemi. We don't know. And then we get the match with Devon Evans and Kofi Kingston. The match was okay. It wasn't all, it wasn't weak, but it was okay. Devon Evans actually, wasn't always, bouncing all the way around. He did throw a couple of punches, did some wrestling moves, so it was good to see that and stuff. Grayson Waller, try to interfere in the match and stuff like that. Xavier Woods, he's injured, so he wasn't getting too much involved. He messed up his shoulder, so he's in a sling. And Devon, hits the OG cutter on Kofi and wins the match and stuff. So, and then we get CM Punk. And then he starts talking about, it's not about, you know, him tonight. It's all about AJ Styles. And then he starts going into the what ifs. And he said, what if it was the last time that he came to an arena, and said, welcome to Monday Night Raw and stuff, and then he goes on and said, what if, Roman Reigns was here, but, Roman Reigns isn't there. And he was going on saying that, because he is a fighting champion, that he will be there and stuff. CM Punk is like basically saying that Roman Reigns doesn't show up for any, shows or anything like that, and it's kind of funny, but it is kind of true and stuff. But then he said that, Roman Reigns will be on Raw next week. And what if he decided, that he didn't want to wait for WrestleMania and that he punches Roman, in his face and stuff next week on Raw? That would be good because if they get into it, you actually really want to see them, you know, like back in the day, when they would really get into it, and then when the PLE showed and everything, you were ready to see who was going to win and stuff. But it's not even like that anymore, you know. Um, and then CM Punk goes into saying that he doesn't believe in, saying what is because he believes in that his, because he's rooted in reality, you know, but he deals with facts, you know. And then he goes on about Finn Balor and stuff, um, that he's gonna, do his thing, take care of Finn Balor, and then move on. But my thing is, what if during that match that CM Punk does get hurt? You know, is gonna take away. Look what's happening to the Vision. They're getting hurt. You know, everything had to change because I'm sure Bronson Reed was supposed to win the elimination chamber. So, but anyway, now things have to change, And then, CM Punk goes in, you know, saying that, what if he was good and everything because he is good, because he's the best in the world. Then it says, he doesn't have to ask himself, what if, you know, he doesn't have to ask himself, what if he was, in the main event because he is in the main event, and, because he's main eventing, WrestleMania. So CM Punk had a few things, good things that he had to say and stuff. So after that, then we have the match with Io Sky, Kairi Sane, and Raquel Rodriguez, which is a qualifying match for the women's, elimination chamber and stuff. And this match, it was okay. Um, Kairi Sane and Io for a while, they were, together and, trying to take out Raquel Rodriguez and stuff. And then they end up going up, against each other. It's a three-way Conway, the best person win and stuff like that. And then Raquel Welch, she is the Hana bomb on Kairi Sane and wins the match. Then we get AJ Styles comes out and everything. He's thanking everybody for, supporting him, thanking some of the guys, that he's wrestled and stuff like that. You know, um, it's great, and then he goes up, says stuff about his career that he's had, especially when he was with, TNA, and then he went to Japan and wrestled with New Japan and stuff, and that's when he met, Gallows and Hayes and everything, you know. And AJ had a great career. AJ was good. He was one of the best. He was in my top 5, as top wrestlers and stuff. Well, I'd say my top 10 as wrestlers and stuff. So and then he thanks his wife, he thanks his kids and everything, and it was great. He is the phenomenal one. I mean, he did his thing. The match that I really liked was one of the matches of his last match is when he went with against John Cena. That was a good match. It took it back, when they first met to when they last met, and it was a good match, him and John Cena. So, and then after that, the Undertaker comes out and everything. It looked like the Undertaker was trying to challenge, AJ Styles, to another match, and I was like, nah, Undertaker's like 500 years old, you know, and stuff. But anyway, then they all up ended up being that, the Undertaker was saying that AJ Styles was going to be inducted into the WWE's Hall of Fame. So congratulations to AJ Styles for that. It's very deserving. He deserves it and stuff, and I'm happy for him, and wherever he goes or whatever he does, like he said, it's time for him to be, that family man, that father, that he's been missing out, with his kids and stuff like that. So kudos to AJ, AJ Styles, may everything work out in his favor. All right. Well, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, leave a comment, let me know how you're saying, and let me know how you're feeling. All right. Thank you for watching. God bless. Deuces, and I'll see you on the next video. Thank you.